One more second here. Alrighty, this is MS Office Hours. Heather, if you want to take us away, make sure we tell everybody if they would not like to be recorded.
Sure. Yeah, it is MS Office Hours on October 15th, 2020. We are now recording. We have transcription on. So if you do not want to be recorded, please do not say anything or add anything to it. I'm Heather Cox with my lovely co-host,
David Perlman.
And we are going to turn it over. Oh, and our Steve Lane, of course, right?
Absolutely, and then we're gonna, Steve. How could we miss him with his new haircut?
And then we're going to turn it over to Andres for part 2 of our lovely special talking about Teams calling. All right, Excellent. Take it over.
Awesome. Thank you. So my name is Andres Avendano. I'm a Modern Workplace Technical Specialist here in the Northeast. I'm also the U.S. Education Teams Technical Specialist. So I'm just going to continue where I left off last time, and I'm going to do part 2 of office hours for Teams calling. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. All right, let me know when you can see my screen.
We can see your screen, Andres. It looks wonderful.
Awesome.
And your video.
All right, so for part 2, we're going to actually get started with Teams calling and direct routing, right? We're going to actually talk through the admin side of things on how to set up a user, how to enable a user, right? And set up some of the more advanced functionalities with call queues and auto attendance. We're also going to be talking about emergency calling, right? And we're going to be showing the process of enabling, again, a Teams user to voice and discuss some of the management on Teams calling, right? Some of those policies. Okay, so to get started with Teams calling, right? Just to highlight what I talked about last week, right? We talked about some of the core capabilities of calling within Teams, right? You're able to make and receive calls within Teams, you know, not just from your desk phone at home or in your office, but you can make calls from home, from your home office, from your mobile device, right? Laptop, anywhere, right? Essentially, we have the platform available, or we have the application available from it for any platform, right? Android, iOS, Windows, Linux, Mac OS, right? And any browser, right? Or any of the major browsers. Right, PSTN calling is available with calling plans and direct routing. We're gonna talk about the two today and what the differences are, right? And what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of either one of them, or what are, I guess, things to consider, more like it. And then to tie it all together, right, at the very end, it's going to be, you know, putting collaboration and voice on top of everything, right? Teams at the very forefront of everything started off as a collaboration platform. We then migrated the calling functionalities from Skype for Business, right? So we're turning it into an enterprise service and an enterprise platform for both collaboration and voice. Okay, so basic calling features, and this is with your calling plans, right? So if you choose to have Teams natively through...
I've been like not drinking it because I've been too lazy to walk downstairs.
Okay, thank you. So this is going to be if you choose to have Microsoft Teams calling as the native. So that means you're going to be migrating all your DIDs, all your numbers, and porting them over to Microsoft, right? You're going to get some basic calling features, right? You're going to have the place, receive, hold calls, right? Initiate by number, name, call, answer, hold. You're going to have your DIDs available to you within the Teams admin portal. Device switching, right? You can do device change active device. And it does proximity join, right, as well from the application onto your desktop onto your application, right? They're able to detect each other to make sure that you're nearby, and it'll ask you if you want to switch. Distinctive ringing, right? Some of the basic functionality, federated calling, so you can call their companies on Teams. You'll be able to do that through peer-to-peer calling, so not just from PSTN side, but you'll also be able to do it from a peer-to-peer as well. Call history, user-facing call history, call details, right? Call detail recording. You're able to get that CDR through an open API. You can make use of that data however you want. You can use the call quality dashboard that's built into Teams, and I'll showcase a little bit. or you can take advantage and build your own dashboards using Power BI, right? We've already built some templates that you can use and kind of use to your advantage to kind of make it a little bit more granular. Or if you want something very specific for your own organization, you can use Power BI to kind of get some more rich reporting as well, okay? Additional telephony features, right? You can able to do the transfer calls. I showcased that last week. And I did that on the demos, right, doing the blind consultative mobile transfers, right? So those are going to be available through Teams calling, caller ID, be able to do reverse number lookup, right? We'll show the contact information if available. You'll be able to choose between 3 different types of caller IDs for yourself, being able to do your own phone number, a service phone number, or an anonymous, right? Now, for I kind of talked about calling plans a little bit, right? For this, I'm going to be switching, right? So this is the direct routing side of Microsoft. So this is for those customers and organizations, right? Schools that may not necessarily be quite ready to move over to Microsoft Teams calling for everything. You may have, very valid reasons why you want to stay with your current provider or your current PBX systems. So you want to be able to have the ability to connect those third-party PBX, right, and that third-party PSTN provider. And the way we've allowed for that is through our direct routing method. And basically what we did is we partnered with third-party OEMs to be able to have certified session border controllers, which act as a gateway to our phone system, our cloud PBX. And from there, you're able to connect to, other third-party PBX. You can connect to analog telephony adapters, right? So if you have analog phones, either through, if you have like the blue light campus elevator phones, right? Emergency services phones, right? Common area phones, whatever you have, you can continue to have them on premise or on analog, but a lot of times we've seen customers move as many to voice over IP, and then the ones that still require to be analog, like the blue lights or the elevators, or fax machines, those kind of stay as analog, and then do some sort of adapter for that. Now, David, I can't see the chat window, so if there's any questions on the chat, do you want to just ping me? Or, call it
I
out,
am
sorry.
keeping up with that. Don't worry. Keep going.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay.
We'll have lots of questions.
All right. So for this reason, right, you basically have the ability to connect to a lot of different session border controllers. Avaya has their own certified SBC, Cisco, and that kind of takes us into this, right? We've kind of built direct routing with a lot of OEMs, and there's a lot more coming. Even this, I just recently updated it, and it's already getting, there's a lot more that needs to be added to this, right? Avaya is not on this list. Avaya is already a certified SBC. But one of the main ones, right, that we keep seeing are audio codes and Cisco are the big 2 that have been asking, right? A lot of people are using audio codes, and a lot of people have a Cisco telephony infrastructure, right? And so the best way for you to integrate that Cisco telephony is to use a Cisco certified Cisco unified border element, which is Cisco's SBC, right? So being able to use a cube, you can now tie that directly to Teams without having to do any additional integration or having to do workarounds. It just automatically integrates from Cisco to Teams natively. All right. So with analog stations, right, again, it's a very crucial part of any customer's environment, right, any school's environment. There's any number of reasons as to why you need them. You're actually able to bring them into Teams calling using direct routing, right? You can use certified partners to use the analog gateways to connect to the SBCs, right? And what that looks like is actually, it looks like this, right? You get your analog telephone adapters that you connect them to your SBC, right? So it's really important, basically, where you can have like either your fax machines, right? Your blue lights, right? They'll go through mostly fax machines and blue lights. They'll go through your ATAs, and then they kind of go through here, right? You can also have like some analogs just go directly into your SBC, depending on what you want and how you want that translated. You have a lot of different options, but essentially the SBC is going to be the gateway to connect to Teams for that. All right. So going back a little bit now into Teams calling. The reason why I kind of leave this last is because it's applicable to both direct routing and to Teams calling, right? Emergency calling. You have to be able to address that, especially with both Ray-Baum's Act and then Kerry's Law coming up here pretty shortly into becoming active here shortly. You have to be able to address those laws, right? And so having a direct routing method, you actually have to provide your own direct route or emergency calling solution, whether you partner with a third-party provider, right? Either West, Intrado, Red Sky, right? Whoever you partner with to be able to provide those emergency calling solutions. Or if you choose to go with the Microsoft Teams calling, you actually do get Microsoft Teams calling gives you that emergency dynamic emergency location, right? And you actually get those services provided to you as part of your licensing. So the dynamic emergency calling is actually route emergency calls based on a known location on the Teams client. Now, the original setup is a little bit tedious because depending on how many locations or known locations you have within your environment, it can be a little bit tedious to update all of that, right? You have to actually input all of that information into the LIS that we provide to you from Teams. The LIS is it's not accessible from the portal. It's actually something that you have to do PowerShell scripting for, right? And it uses Azure Map Services. And essentially what's going to happen is that you're going to get your LIS filled up with as much information. Then you're going to go ahead and assign a location, a static location to a user. And then what's going to happen is then you have to also configure your subnets and your switch ports to be able to provide exact locations based on those subnets, right, and the building locations, right? So that gives you a little bit more granularity as to where exactly the call is coming from, based all the way down into the floor level, right? You can't get a little bit, you cannot get more granular than the floor level at the time being, but for right now, that's what we provide. And that's a limitation actually for quite a lot of the cloud-based telephony solutions. We are working on getting a more granular solution for this, but for the time being, that's what we do offer. So essentially, the way the dynamic calling works is that once the person calls 911, it's going to get the location from your subnets and your switch ports to determine the as close as possible location to where that caller is calling from. What's going to happen is that that's going to cross-match your LIS to make sure that it's actually as close as possible to the static location of that user. Once it does cross-match that and it crosses like an actual LIS location, it'll then submit that to the PSAP. PSAP will then say, okay, this location cross-matches, everything's good. It'll route it to the appropriate PSAP, right? We have regional PSAPs across the US, right, that can give you a better tailored experience for that. Otherwise, if it's not able to cross-match a location in the LIS based and then cross-match that with your subnets, it'll basically go to a national PSAP and then it'll route the call accordingly afterwards. Okay. For
Quick
direct
question,
routing, yep.
Any support for BSS IDs on wireless?
Wireless support, it is available there. I don't know the exact protocol for that. I would have to look that documentation up. But I can provide that after the call in the chat.
Thanks, Andres.
Mm-hmm. So direct routing can also leverage emergency location identification number gateway. So this is more for direct routing, right? This is, again, you have to add another gateway in order for you to have an LIS, right? And this is typically provided by a third-party 911 services like Intrado or Red Sky or West, okay? And you also have the option to configure your security desk notifications. So for campus police, right? So when a user calls E911, a lot of times what you can do is actually create a security desk notification where it'll actually notify your campus police. They'll get the location, who made the call, and then where the call is coming from, and then the campus police can then go and get to that location in a lot shorter time than probably the local police force can, right? And so you have the option to do that as well and configure that for your tenant as well. Okay. this is more information on the automatic routing to PSAP, right? And this is included with your calling plans, right? This is going to be available to you through the deck. So if you want to look over that, you can kind of get into a little bit more details. Okay. So enabling a Teams user for voice, right? It's very easy to do so. It basically breaks down into 3 steps. You have to assign a license, right? A phone system license and a calling plan to the user. That's the first step. Now, if your user already has an A5 license or an E5 license, that user already has that phone system license assigned to them. So then the only thing you would have to do is assign a calling plan to them. The second phase is going to be assigning an available telephone number in an emergency location. And I'll showcase this in the demo here shortly. Now, the third thing that you're going to do is assign a specific policies that you would like to have your individual end user have, right? Whether you want that user to have the ability to call international, the ability for them to, have a specific dial plan, whether it's a US or for, campuses that may have international campuses, right? Or different location campuses, right? You may want to have regional dial plans, and those dial plans take into account like the extension dialings and etc. Okay. So the admin center, here's a link to the admin center, right? So this is where I'm going to go ahead and do a demo here shortly. As far as being able to manage the admin center, right, and be having all these access controls, we did actually break it down even further. We only used to have like the team service admin, service administrator, but we've actually created 3 new roles, and I believe there's more roles to come to be a little bit more granular. As far as being able to do, manage calling, meetings, troubleshoot it. So this is more for like the support engineer and support specialist. So, but as far as being able to manage the calling services, the Teams communication administrator will grant you access to the Teams voice. All right, administrative call control. This is going to be for administrators to be able to modify calling behavior previously isolated to the Teams client. So this is a new feature that's really been a top ask from a lot of customers. Is when it comes to like delegation, some of the features that I showed last week. When you assign delegations, right? When you assigned, group call pickups, call parking, right? You can actually set that from a tenant level. So think about those, department heads or executives that don't necessarily want to say, hey, why do I need to set up my own delegates? Set it up for me. You can actually do that from a tenant level. You can assign the delegates and the appropriate rights for that delegate to be able to receive and make calls on their behalf. Also for call pickup or group call pickups as well. So maybe for department groups that it might be a common area phone, right? And you want that common area phone. If nobody picks up, it'll ring everybody else in that group. You can do things like that as well. And those are all available now from the call control, from the Teams admin center. You can actually pick the user on the Teams admin center, go to voice, and then you'll have those features right there. The group call pickup, you can add people, and then put them in the order that you want them to ring, right? So you can actually do it by order, or you can have it dial out everybody at the same time. Okay. Last thing two things I'm gonna talk about before I get into the demo, real quickly here, since we're kind of running a little bit short on time. So call queues and auto attendance, right? So with call queues and auto attendance, right, you have the ability to be completely configurable. You have multi-level IVR, so we actually do have interactive voice response now. We do have rich text-to-speech, something that we're using Azure Cognitive Services and conversational chatbots as well. With that, you do have the auto attendant with business hours, directory search, and dial scope, so you can actually designate your hours of work, your specific routing based on your business hours, right? So if you're outside of business hours, it's going to route to a different auto attendant, or it's going to go directly to voicemail, or play a message and disconnect, whatever you want to do. You can configure your hold music, right? You can upload your own audio files. And it does support up to 14 languages. So it does do multi-language IVR as well. For call queues, right, it's the same It's going to be your hunt groups, right? You provide an organizational greeting, provide music while people are waiting on hold, and then supports redirect calls to call agents, right? You can have up to a maximum of 200 call agents, and then I believe, or 200 calling, and I believe there's a pretty large limit for how many agents you can have. I think it's in the thousands. I'll have to look that up, but you have a pretty large, substantial amount of agents that you can support within a call queue. And essentially what you can do for this is that you can have the ability for users to route, or for your call tree to route to specific users, whether you want it to be based on skills or specific groups. We actually integrate this directly with Azure Active Directory. So if you already have OUs in your Active Directory that already have all these groups broken down, as long as you synchronize your Active Directory into Azure AD, any distribution groups or any security groups are all eligible to be agents, as added as part of groups for these call queues. So you'll be given a lot of ability to actually automate this whole process of creating call queues. Okay, I've kind of talked about auto attendants, right? Provide custom corporate menus, rich text to speech, right? And I'll show this really quickly. So I'm kind of going by this really quickly just so I can get to this. Okay. Last but not least is going to be the contact center solution. So a lot of times when we're talking about contact centers, right, this is where we're talking about the auto attendants and call queues. We provide like a lot of basic functionalities, right? But when you start to get into the more advanced functionalities needs, like we need to do skill-based routing, or we need to do CRM integrations, right? Ticketing systems, right? We need to integrate into we need to do call recording, right? We have a requirement that all our support calls have to be recorded for quality or for any compliance needs, right? Things like that. We do have contact centers, and these are the 3 ways that they can connect to us. Typically, you know, depending on what your experience you want, right? Connect via direct routing. Direct routing means that it's just going to be a contact center. They have their solution completely separate from Teams, and they just connect to your Teams infrastructure using direct routing. So they use the telephony piece, and that's about it. Connect and extend, it's basically doing that plus a little bit of an extension where they might do 1 or 2 applications on Teams to do maybe some of those contact center functionalities from a limited standpoint. And then the extend and power, that's going to be doing a full native contact center solution on Teams. So they're using the Teams SDKs as well as the open APIs that we have to be able to create a full contact center right on Teams and using Teams applications only. So depending on which model you want to take, we do have different partners for that, and these are the list of partners. And of course, there's more coming. So there's already one on there, Landis, that's not on that list. That Landis and 10.4 are the ones that are native for Teams, Genesys, and they're known for their Genesys Engage, which is using Azure Communication Services. So there's quite a lot of partners that we work with. Okay.
So hey, Andres, just I know as you're going on, we have about 8 minutes left here, and I know you want to do a demo. Quick couple of questions. Would you rather do that before we do the demo?
Let me do the demo real quickly.
Go ahead.
And then I'll answer questions, because I'll do the demo in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right. So last one thing that I wanted to showcase is the fact that, you know, again, I'm kind of speeding through this, but in order to be able to create auto attendants and call queues, so this is from an administrative standpoint now, you have to create resource accounts, right? These resource accounts you're going to create, and then essentially you have a phone number assigned to them. In order to assign them a phone number, you have to actually go to the admin.microsoft, not just the Teams one, and you have to purchase, and I say purchase, but they're $0 SKUs. You have to purchase the Microsoft 365 virtual user license, or Microsoft 365 phone system virtual user. So this is a $0 SKU, so you can order as many as you want, but you have to go through the purchasing process of it. And then you assign it to those individual resource accounts. They'll show up under users. Once you assign those, that you license to those users, you're then able to assign a phone number to them. Once you do that, you can come in here under, voice, and then you can start creating call queues. And I usually recommend doing these in this order, just because there's kind of a flow, right, when you start to create these things. So resource accounts first, then you go into call queues, you create your call queues, right? I created call queues in 2 different languages, Spanish and English, right? So when you start to get into here, you open it up, it's going to give you the name. You start adding the resource accounts, which assigns a phone number to that call queue, right? You can do a greeting, right? The greeting is going to be an audio file for the call queue. You can do the default music, or you can upload your own music. What's important here is that I've chosen to do a distribution list, right, or an Office 365 group. So I've created a group with the agents already pre-listed to it. So what's important with this is that if you have like a new hire, you don't have to worry about assigning them to the call queue. You just assign them to the group, and they'll be added to this automatically. They just have to have the appropriate licensing, right? We also do have different methods of routing, right? You have attendant, which is going to ring everybody at once. Serial is going to do one by one. Round robin is going to basically do the same number of calls for everybody. And then the longest idle is going to be basically give the call to the person who's been without a call the longest, right? And then do the presence-based routing. So I always recommend doing this just because it'll take your presence. So if you're already on a call, or you're already on if you're on a call, you're in a meeting, right? Or maybe you're in training and you're busy, you don't want to take, you don't want to take additional calls, right? And you can also allow agents to opt out of calls, which I showed last time. If let's say you wanted to go on a lunch break and you wanted to opt out of calls for the time being, you can do so as well. But this is where you can choose what happens during the call overflow, right? So you can choose to see how many calls you want to have maximum on your queue. For the most part, for most small to medium sizes, you're probably going to see anywhere between like 10, 15, but it's up to you, right? Depending on what your support system looks like. But you can have up to a maximum of 200 calls. And then what happens once that call reaches a maximum, you can redirect this or disconnect it. And the redirect it, you can choose to go to voicemail, or you can have it go to a voice app. The voice app can basically, you can choose it to go through the auto attendant again. So you can have it kind of loop over and over until they can get a hold of somebody, right? And for voicemail, you can actually have transcription on. So this transcription also does support the 14 languages. So the voicemail will show up on your voicemail inbox as the original language, but when it sends it to Exchange, it'll send the audio file with the original language, right? It'll actually recognize the language and do a transcription of that language, and it'll also do a translation to your preferred language of choice. Okay, and then call time handling out, so same thing, right? So you can actually choose to do so. So once you've created your call queues, you're gonna go ahead and then go to your auto attendant, and this is where I usually like to do the demo, right? Calling. So I've done an English and a Spanish, and essentially all you're going to do is, again, name it, and then you start to create your call flows, right? And your call flows is you play a greeting. So again, this greeting can be changed within a minute. So as long as you type something within a minute, you'll be able to actually hear that message again. And you'll be able to hear that message play out through the phone. And then it'll play the menu. And the menu has interactive voice response, so you can actually do text or speak to the language, right? And I'm going to go ahead and show this real quick. All right. So
you have reached the Teams demo team. Please listen carefully to the following menu options, as they may have changed. Also, given our high demand for demos, you may experience higher than normal wait times. Thank you for calling Teams Voice Demo. If you would like to talk to a demo specialist, please press 1 or say demo. If you would like to get support on Teams Voice, please press 2 or say support. If you need support in Spanish, please press 9 or say Spanish. Gracias por llamarnos. Por favor, escuche nuestras opciones que pueden haber cambiado. Hoy, el 15 de octubre, no hay escuela por el clima. Hay demasiado nieve. Para asistencia en demostraciones, presione 1. Si quisiera ayuda técnica, presione 2.
So I did that because I wanted to showcase the different language supports. So what's going to happen is that now you have the ability to do multiple languages, right? And now you have the ability to do, so you can do one call tree fall into another. You can have those routed back and forth. So you have all this available to you. And what's going to happen is that eventually it's going to be routing this call directly to my agent that does support Spanish, right? So eventually I should be getting this call routed directly into one of my agents here. And there it is. Right, so it's connecting. All right,
So,
there you go.
Hey,
Yep,
Andres,
yep,
got a couple of people burning for a question, so
yep.
love the demo.
Yep, that's it. Essentially, that's all I had for the demo, but I would leave it open to questions now.
Awesome. We have a few, and then I may need to jump. So Heather, if you're able to stick around for a little bit, I have a customer that's excited. So real quick, Akash Shaw or Shaw Akash, can you just email me at david.perlman@microsoft.com? Just copy and paste that in there. I don't have your email address without going to look you up in the group. And then
Sure.
I've looped in Stephen Scholes, one of our other TSPs, right? So if you're still on, please send in that question to me in an email, and I'll loop in Steve and see if we can answer that. Alrighty, Andres, a couple of quick questions here.
Yep.
I'm not sure if you're looking at it now. First one from Alan Taylor. I'm going to turn off the recording too real quick, just because sometimes we get a little far afield in our. All right, stop recording. Excellent.